So the goal of today is to learn how to properly set up scheduler templates and scheduler groups. So we're not going to be getting into really advanced things today. Again, we're just kind of kicking off this webinar workshop series. So today we're going to be covering a lot of basic material, but there might be some things in here that maybe if you've been using the scheduler, you weren't aware of. So it'll be great material, especially for building those scheduler templates. Now, a quick introduction for those of you, maybe this is your first webinar and are just interested in how the scheduler works and what the purpose is. A quick introduction, the Dubsado scheduler allows you to set your general availability for a particular type of appointment, like a consultation or a coffee chat. And then Dubsado takes that availability that you have that you build into the scheduler and it cross-checks it with conflicts from any external calendars you've connected and identifies available appointment slots that someone could book with you. So if you're familiar with platforms like Acuity or Calendly, different systems like that, third-party schedulers, the goal with Dubsado is to eventually replace the need to have those third-party schedulers. So basically, to wrap that up, you can set your availability, send it out to a client. They can see when you have availability on the board, and then they can book with you. Now, as far as external calendars and connections and all of that, we're talking about that next week. Is the title for that webinar is Scheduler Templates and Calendar Connections. So definitely tune in next week to get an understanding of how it works with your calendar and what you can do with that. So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about building and we're going to talk about the basic tab first. So let me jump into Dubsado. And if you're not familiar with Dubsado, the scheduler is going to be on the left-hand side here underneath the templates section. So when you click on templates, you'll see scheduler and it will take you to this page here. Now with the scheduler templates, one thing to pay attention to is just how many templates you're going to need on the left-hand side here. The scheduler works off of appointment types. So if you have different types of appointments, that might mean you have a 15-minute consultation, a 30-minute consultation, maybe you have a paid session, maybe you have a paid consultation versus a free consultation. All of those different appointment types, those will all be separate templates in Dubsado. So it's really important to grasp that part of it, is that however many templates or appointment types you're going to use, you want to create that many different templates. And one thing we're going to talk about in 2 weeks is all of the different methods on sending and what could necessitate a brand new template being created. When is it important to create a new one? We'll talk about that in 2 weeks when we talk about booking appointments and all of that. So you're going to create on the left-hand side all of the different appointment types that you have. And that could be, like I said, 30 minutes, 15 minutes. It could be based off of duration that it changes. It could be based off of the actual availability. A lot of different factors play into that. So if you have appointment types with the same availability, so let's say you do a 15-minute consultation and you also do a 30-minute consultation, but the availability is the same. You have the same hours that you're going to be doing for those. It just depends on what type of appointment. You can duplicate scheduler templates with all of the parameters and settings that you have for one. You can duplicate that, and that way you won't have to recreate the same availability, the same parameters for each template. So if we are looking at all of these templates on the side, and we're going to jump into all of this here in a second, but this double box icon, the blue icon, that's going to be how you can duplicate or copy a template. And once you do that, it takes everything that you had from the one that you're working on, and then it creates an exact duplicate of that. So that way you're not having to recreate templates over and over again. So just something to take into consideration when you're building these. You can duplicate them. And also one other thing, and this isn't in the outline, but I'll just mention it here. You can restructure these. So if you click and drag, just like packages in our system, you can restructure the order of these to give you more of an order of how you want things to go. We don't have folders built into here at the moment, but you can reorder and restructure these to be alphabetical, in the certain appointment types. Like here, I have all my consultations in one area. So you are able to restructure those on the left-hand side. And when you want to add a template, you can just click the add template button there. And you can also book one here underneath add template there. So you can create them there. So now let's jump into the actual section here when you're building a template. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the basic tab and kind of going through all of these parameters. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the appointment name. Pretty straightforward. However, one thing that I do have on my outline that I want to mention with this is that this will be seen by the client. So it's important to remember that when you're titling your appointment names, the client is going to be able to see that. And what I'll do for you, and I'm going to kind of jump back and forth between the outline, this page, and what an actual scheduler template looks like. And I'll kind of show you how to get there. But if I open up what our scheduler template looks like, this right here is going to be the name of the appointment. So the client can see this. So you don't want to title it something that is just for you internally that makes sense for you. You want it to be something that when the client opens it up, it's apparent that that's what it's going to be for, and that you have somewhat of a naming convention in place when you're titling that. So it is important up there, as you can see in the top left, that whatever the name of your appointment is going to be up there at the top. Appointment duration, pretty straightforward there. 15 minutes, 30, or 60 are the defaults, but you can always do a custom time. If you do a custom time here, one thing to pay attention to is the maximum duration length is 12 hours. There's a little help node right there that you can see. But the maximum duration length is 12 hours. So currently with our scheduler, you're not able to book out, let's say like an entire week of time for somebody. We don't have that capability quite yet. So just take that into account, that if you're booking out 3 or 4 days, maybe someone's just booking out 1 day with the understanding that it's going to take up more time than that. So 12 hours is the maximum duration length for right now. And then we'll just go ahead and set that back to 30. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the rolling day window. And I'll jump back to my outline here to talk about that. With the duration, I don't have that in the outline because it's pretty straightforward there. But with the appointment duration, we're going to talk about rolling day window first, because that's going to be probably the most popular use of the appointment being scheduled. Setting a rolling window of days, or a rolling day window, however you want to frame it, to be available is relative to when the booking invitation is sent to the client. So this controls how far in advance the client can see into your availability. So what that means is, when you have rolling day window, if you set that to 14 days, that means that once you send this to a client and they open up the scheduler, the next 14 days is going to be available for them to book on. It's when you send it out to the client, the next 14 days is available, and it continues to roll every 2 weeks. So if you want someone to only be able to see 2 weeks into your calendar and nothing past that, you would do 14 days. You could change this to 30 days for, let's say, they can see the next month on your calendar, and it just continues to roll every 14, every 30 days. So that's going to probably be the most popular. The other options that we do have is fixed date. This one is pretty self-explanatory. The fixed date, you can set an exact date range. So this works really well for like holiday sales. If you're doing mini sessions, you might set a specific date that you want this particular scheduler to follow. So fixed date is only going to be usually in occasions of specials that you're running, certain events, and holiday things as well. So you can actually set an actual hard start and end date for how long that this template is going to be in play. And then the last thing is indefinitely. This would probably work best if you're more in like the wedding industry, where you want someone to be able to fast forward to the year 2021 and maybe get something on the calendar for a consultation, something like that. Indefinitely means that someone can go as far as they want to in the future. If they want to book you for the year 2023, they could cycle all the way there and find a date and book you. So think about which one works best for you. Like I said, most of the time you're going to want to do rolling day window because you only want to show the client maybe your next 60 days and they can get on the calendar there, but nothing further than that. Because obviously people go on vacations, things come up, and you don't want to have someone booked in the year 2021 and you're not even sure what's going to happen then. So rolling day window will probably be your go-to. So we'll just put 14 days there. And that's how the rolling day window works. The next thing we'll talk about is actually booking your availability here and setting the times that you're available. So this is like setting your office hours, basically setting when am I available to take this particular type of consultation. Now, take into consideration here that each template has its own set of availability. So for example, with my 15-minute consultation, maybe I only want to do 15-minute consultations on Fridays and Saturdays. So I can set specific times on each template. You can have it where it's all the same. If you just duplicate your templates, it will all have the same availability. So you don't have to worry about setting it for each one. But that is important when you're building these, is to know that if you change your availability on one template, that's not going to change it on all of your other ones. So if you do set something and you want it to be for all of them, then I would recommend building one template and then just duplicating that so it brings in the same availability across the board there. So when you're booking or setting your times that you're available, if you click on a date, so let's say we click on this, and also, by the way, it's always going to default to 9 to 5. Whenever you create a template from scratch, 9 to 5 will always be the default. But again, you can change that. Some people I've talked to on the phone didn't realize that you can change that. They think it might just be how it's set, but you are able to change this. So once you're in here and you click on a date, so this is going to be for Monday, the 22nd. As you can see right here, this is going to be what's preset in there, and there's a red X next to that. What that allows you to do is this is going to show you the space of all of the different blocks of time that you have set in here. So if you click the red X, that's going to remove the availability that's preset into the 22nd right now. So the next thing you can do is actually set your available time. So what I want to do, just to give you an example of what's possible, you can set blocks of time in here. So let's say that I'm available from 8 a.m. until, let's say, 11 a.m. and I can click add times and it will add that slot in here. And then let's say I'm available from, we'll just say 1 p.m. until 6 p.m., let's say. And I'll go to 6 p.m. and click add times. So you can add blocks of time in here if you would like to. It doesn't have to be just, from this time to this time. You can have blocks of time if you want to. Once you do that, then you have the ability to say, do I want this only for June 22nd, the day I'm on, or if I want this to be for all Mondays? And that would make my 8 to 11 and 1 to 6 for all of my remaining Mondays on my calendar to infinity. So here, if I want this to be, let's just say for all Mondays, and I click that, now my availability is going to be 8 to 11 and 1 to 6 where people can book with me moving forward from now on, and every single week I go to, it's always going to be that time frame. So that's how you can do that. So what you'll need to do at very minimum is each day you would need to set all Tuesdays, all Wednesdays, all Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, whatever days you're available, you'll at least at minimum need to set those days there. So that's how you can build in your availability, is just by clicking on the date and deciding, is it for just this day that I want to do that? Or is this just how my Thursdays work? And then you can put in that availability there. And that's for each template. Now, again, I will preface, if I changed it on this template, it's not going to update it for all of my different templates that I have. It's only going to be for this one. The only way to bring in the same is if you're duplicating those templates. So once you have your availability set here and you have your parameters on kind of what your office hours are, that's a way that you can think about it when you're available to take calls. The next thing that I want to talk about is once booked, show me as. This is a very big piece of the system because this is in direct connection to how it's going to look at your calendar. So with this, and we'll talk about this a lot next week as well, there's a lot of things in these workshop series that we're going to kind of touch base, and you'll probably hear it multiple times. So what this means is that once someone books a slot with me, so for example, let's take Monday here at 8 a.m. If someone were to book a 30-minute session with me at 8 a.m. on Monday, if you have show me as busy, that means that 8 a.m. slot is no longer available. This is going to be what people are going to use probably 99% of the time. Is when you mark it as busy, that means that no one else can book that time slot anymore, which is how most appointments work. So you're going to want to most of the time have this set to busy. There are certain situations where available actually works better for you. So let's talk about some of those. So like I said in my outline, 99% of the time you'll set it to busy. Available works really well for, let's say, group sessions. So let's say that I have a scheduler template that is for a group session that I'm having, and I have, let's say, an 8 to 9 slot, and that's one of my group sessions, and I have that set there. What you can do is if you set that to available, that means that if one person books that 8 a.m. slot, it's not fully closed. It leaves it open now so another person can book at that exact same time. If you do appointments where you're only seeing one person at a time, you're going to want to mark it as busy because obviously you don't want another person to book that same time. Because available, if you set it as available, that means that I'm open to take more appointments even if someone has booked me already. The other thing that you can use it for is any type of class that you have where you want there to be maybe 2 or 3 people to book a certain time slot, and you would only want that time available on your calendar as just that time. So someone can book, let's say, an 8 to 9, and you can have all these people in that particular session. So that's a way that you can use available. But like I said, most of the time it's going to be set to busy because you want that time slot blocked out on your calendar. The next thing we're going to talk about is location. Now, the location section here, this is really great for any type of Zoom meeting, Google Meet links that you have, any type of Skype call that you might have. This is going to be a place that I've typically seen people post in a link. And what this link will do, and we're going to talk about this later when we talk about appointment smart fields, is that you can have the location autofill on emails that go out to clients, and the other place that it's available as well on the actual scheduler, as you can see, is right underneath the appointment duration time. So this is going to show you the location of that particular template that you have. With that being said, this does not have the capability at the moment to generate a new link for every person. So what you can only use this for, if you are planning on using Zoom or using, a Google Meet or anything like that, is you would want to put your personal meeting link in there. So if you have, let's say, if mine is, skype.com or zoom.com/Cameron meeting room, and every person that I am going to be talking to is going to go to that link, then I can put it in there. It's only if you have a static link, because this room number, whatever number it is that you have, is going to be what sends out for every appointment. So it has to be one of those static links. Now, we are doing some work. Our development team and our product team is working on developing a Zoom integration. Obviously, right now with what's going on in the world with the pandemic, virtual meetings are now becoming just a standard norm across the board. So this would be a great time if you do want to use our scheduler. I would just create a personal meeting link that you can throw in there. And then that way, every person that you're talking to, they'll have just your personal meeting link, and then they can jump into that particular room that you have. But we are working on some things that are going to help with Zoom integrations and Google Meet. And so that's going to be coming down the pipeline at a later time to make it easier to link up to Zoom and other platforms there. But in the meantime, that's how you can use your location, is by plugging in a link there. We get that question a lot on calls, is how can I integrate my Zoom or meeting link? Location is going to be the best place there to do that. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is the actual email, the invitation email. So let me go to my outline here because there are some points that I want to talk about with the invitation email. This email is the email that you would use to send an invite to your client to book an appointment with you. So what I mean by that is this. This email that you have down here is what you would send out to a client saying, hey, I would really love for you to jump on my calendar so we can talk. Please click on this link to book a time with me. I've seen a lot of people that have the confirmation email maybe in here or appointment reminders in here. What this email is designed for is what we like to call the invitation email. It's inviting your client to book a call with you. So the language that should go in this email is all about, hey, I'm so glad. Thank you for your inquiry. Please click on the link below to book an appointment with me. And what you'll have in there, as you can see, is that you have to have a scheduler link in this email, because if you're familiar with Dubsado, anytime that you have a form link in there or a contract link or any type of smart field link, it's going to put a button in there for the client to click on to access that availability. So in this email, you can have the body say whatever it is that you want it to say in your language. However, you just want to make sure that you have that scheduler link in there, because that's going to be how the client accesses your scheduler template, this template that we're building here. So biggest takeaway from this is just to know that this is the invitation email. So your language should be as follows, with all of the, please get on my calendar and all of that. So the next thing that I do want to say with this is that this email, because some people are saying, well, when would I use that email? If that's going to be inviting someone to book a call with me, when would I use that? You would use that in your workflow potentially. If you added, let's say, a paid session scheduler template with a link that says, hey, it's time for your paid session. Please click on the link below. You're sending that through a workflow, or you're manually using that to send through Dubsado. The most important thing to know is that that email is only used if you are planning on emailing that template to your client inside of Dubsado. So that's the only time you will use this invitation email. You won't be using this if you're embedding your scheduler on your website, or this email won't be what you would use to send to someone who's not already in the system. This is only to send to people who are in the system, and it's all being sent through Dubsado. So that's a really important piece for that invitation email. And obviously, once you do it in workflows, you can choose which one of your canned emails you want to use for that. But that's the default that would pop up if you're adding that to a workflow. And then the last thing, I already covered this, but I'll mention it again. The scheduler link is required in this email to provide a button for the client to click on. So you have to have that scheduler link button in there, or the brackets in there, that will let them access your availability. So that's everything on the basic tab. Everything's pretty straightforward here. There's not too much to digest. It's all pretty straightforward on what each part is. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. The next thing that I want to jump into now is the advanced tab. So a lot of people aren't aware that there is even an advanced tab with this that has a whole nother set of parameters and settings and things you can do to maximize your client experience. So let's jump over to the advanced tab, and we'll dive into all of these here and where everything's coming from and what all this means. So again, take into consideration before we jump into this, that this is for each template that you have can have its own parameter settings. We don't really have a global settings where you set it and it applies to all scheduler templates. Each template can have its own availability and its own advanced appointment settings, sending and sharing options. So just think about that when you're making edits to one. You'll want to do that for the other ones, or like I said previously, do it for one and then duplicate it. So that way you can have it carry over from template to template. So in the advanced tab, let's talk about prevention first. Prevention means that no one can book an appointment with you within that certain amount of time. It's kind of like your cutoff time. Another great way to say it is, how long do you want to have to prepare for a call? So for example, 24 hours in advance, that means that I would at least have a day to prepare for my call. It's kind of like a preparation setting. If you want to have it set for 48 or 96 hours, so you have that much time to prepare before your call, people won't be able to book with you inside of 24 hours or inside of 12 hours. So that gives you some time where if you had this set to, let's say, 0, that means that someone could book an appointment with you for in the next 30 minutes and that you would have to be on the phone with them in the next 30 minutes, which most people probably don't want. So use this prevention to your advantage to give yourself some buffer time. So for right now in LA, no one could book an appointment with me until 10:15 on Saturday morning. So that gives me a full day to be able to prepare for that call. Buffer time. Now on my outline, I do have a great example of this because this can kind of get confusing on what this is actually doing and how you can use this effectively. So what the buffer time is going to do is give you a certain amount of time after your appointment's over and before your next upcoming appointment. And this will also allow you that in between appointments, if you have travel time, if you have, time that you need to prepare in between calls, then, or sessions or whatever you have, this is where you can set that. So on my outline here, I have an example, and I'm going to change this to 15 and 15 so you can understand what that's actually doing. So if you have it set for 15 and 15, let's say that you have an available slot from, and I'll open this up here to make it bigger here. So let's say you have an available time from 11:30 to 12:30, and that's one of your sessions that you have. If you have 15 minutes after the appointment and also 15 minutes before, that's going to put a 30-minute buffer in between your calls. So your next available wouldn't be until 1 p.m. So if you only need, let's say, 15 minutes in between a call, and that's all you really need, then I would just say do either 0:15 or 15:0. That would work the same theoretically. But that's what your buffer time is actually going to give you, is however much time after the appointment's over and then how much time before that next appointment. So if you do have it set up with some really big buffer times on both sides and you're noticing that there's not a lot of availability there, you should look at your buffer times to see if it's creating too much buffer space. So that's also a really important piece there to take into consideration when you're building your templates. And then increments. So increments is what times on the clock do you want to show your client that you're available? So on the outline, I have some examples of that so you can see what that would look like. So for example here, and I can actually increase this a little bit so you guys can see. So with this, if you have it set for 15-minute increments, it's going to be 10, 10:15, 10:30, 10:45. So every 15-minute increment, another time slot's available. 30-minute increments, 10, 10:30, 11, and then obviously with 60 minutes, 10, 11, 12. So that's how you can adjust your increments around if you want there to be more availability, 10, 10:15, 10:30, you can set that increment time lower, and that will open up more slots for you as far as when people can book. So that's how the increment side of things works. Let me back out here and take my zoom off. And then appointment details. So what this allows you to do is give you some control over how many of these you can take per day, and also totality, how many you can have of this certain thing. So let's talk about both of these. The first thing is maximum appointments per day. This is pretty straightforward, basically saying I can only do 5 of these types of consultations per day. Once I've done those, then this template will not be useful. No one can, or I won't say it won't be useful, but no one can book on that day for me anymore because I've already hit my 5 limit. We only have this available per day. We've had a lot of questions about, can you do this for, let's say I only want 20 consultations in 1 week. We don't have that built into our scheduler at the moment. Right now, it's only per day. So you will have to kind of monitor if you've reached a certain amount, then maybe you want to, take the consultation down off of your website or block out some of your time so that you're not available. However you want to use it, that's going to be what you would essentially do just for like a week if you wanted to block out a certain week of time once you hit a certain limit. And then the last thing here underneath the advanced appointment settings is allow this scheduler to be used X amount of times. So let me jump over to my outline here because I have some information on that. This is going to set a maximum amount of time that template can be used. Once it hits that limit, that scheduler does not work anymore. It's completely shut down. So what this works really great for are for, let's say, coaches and consultants who don't want their clients booking more or extra sessions beyond what it is. So let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say that you take a scheduler, and we're going to dive into this more in the upcoming weeks. Let's say that you take a scheduler template and you put it into the client portal for a client, and they've purchased 10 sessions with you as a coach. What you can do in your scheduler template section is in here, you can say, I only want this to be used a maximum of 10 times. Once it goes into a client portal, that's 10 times for that client that it can be used. So that way they're not booking 11 or 12 sessions for you, and you don't have to worry about them abusing how many sessions they've scheduled with you. So if this was, let's say, a 10 session scheduler that you create, once it goes into a client portal, now you have a cap that you can put on it for your clients. Now, that's only if you're adding it into a client portal does it work that way. If you have it set up for 10 times and you're, let's say, embedding it on your website where everybody has access to it, then it would be once that hits 10, it's done. This works really great for group classes. If you're embedding this onto a website, let's say you do classes or group sessions, maybe you do mini sessions where you're saying, I only want to, do 15 mini sessions on this particular event that I'm doing. Once 15 people book, I don't want to take on any more. That's a way that you can utilize this here, where it is allow the scheduler to be used this amount of times. If it's embedded, that means anybody who gets on there, as soon as it hits 10, it's done. Once you put it into a client portal or you send it to the client personally, then it's per client. So hopefully that makes sense on the differences between the two of those. But that, and if you leave this blank, that means that they can just use it, as many times as needed. So you can just leave it blank if it's like a 30-minute consultation. But that's how you can use those two to kind of manipulate and control how many appointments total you want maybe for a certain template, and also how many of these you want to take per day. So that's how the appointment details work. And now we're going to get into the sending and sharing options. Now, there's a lot in this section that I want to talk about. So really, to kind of break this down, I would say that if you get anything from the webinar today, it's this section right here, the sending and sharing options, because there's a lot of great stuff in here that you want to pay attention to. First of all, the welcome message. The welcome message is going to display at the top of each one of your scheduler templates. So for example, and this is per scheduler template, remember all of these settings are for each one of your templates. So if you have, let's say, welcome to Dubsado, on the actual scheduler template, the banner across the top is going to say whatever your welcome message is. So you can manipulate that to say whatever it is that you would like. But that's going to be, at least visually, what it looks like to the client is the banner across the top up there. So you can customize that per template. The next thing is the confirmation email. Now, this is really big. With the confirmation email, we get a lot of questions, and I've seen a lot of people put their confirmation emails into their workflows. So once someone books with you, people are adding those emails to their workflows. With the scheduler templates, you can put your confirmation email in the scheduler template itself, meaning that once they book an appointment on this template, it's going to automatically send them a confirmation email. So you don't need to worry about putting that into a workflow because it's actually a part of the template itself. So it actually eliminates some of your workflow actions because the scheduler template has some automation capabilities wrapped up inside of it. So this section is going to be where you would add a confirmation email. Now, I'm going to remove this here because this is normally what the confirmation email looks like when you first create a template. If you do not have any email in here, you haven't selected a custom canned email to go in your confirmation email area, what happens is Dubsado will send its default confirmation email out to the client. This is another reason that you don't want to have it in your workflow, because then they'll get two. They'll get the default one that sends out inside of this, and I'm going to show you where that's at here in a second, but they'll get the email that's attached to this scheduler, and then they'll also get the one that's in your workflow as well. So if you have this blank, I'll show you where that email is going to be located that's going to automatically go out to your client just to make sure they get a confirmation email. So here, if we go to canned emails and then we go to edit templates up here at the top, this is going to be a list. If you're not familiar with this list, these are all of the default templates that pop up when you're doing these actions in the system. If you click send form and you're sending out a questionnaire, that default email that pops up is underneath here, underneath send form, or the default portal email that you always see, that's underneath here. If you go down to appointment confirmed, this email right here is what automatically goes out to a client anytime someone books on that template. If you don't have anything in that confirmation email space, you haven't added anything in there, this is the email that will go out to them. So that means one of two things. Either you can just edit this default and then leave your scheduler template how it is, and it will just send out this default. If this works for you and this looks good, then you can leave it or edit this. And that way on your scheduler template and all of your other ones, that just that default will go out each time. So you can either edit this email, or in the canned email section, you can create your own. So in here, I just have two emails. One is an appointment reminder. One's a confirmation email. The confirmation email is pretty much the exact same thing. I added a few things in there just so I can show you a little bit later. But now if I go into my scheduler and I'm going to go to my 30-minute consultation to the advanced tab, now I can click on here, and I forgot to save it, so it didn't save my changes, but I can add my confirmation email to go in there now. So either way, they're going to be getting a confirmation email, either the default in Dubsado or one that you add in there. So pick whichever one you want to do, but what that means is, most importantly, is that it's not going to need to be a part of your workflow because it's built into the scheduler template itself, and just by them booking on it, it's going to shoot them a confirmation email. So that's really important there. The next thing, and let me just double check my outline just to make sure. Okay, I do have that in there, and where you can access the default template underneath templates, canned emails, edit templates, appointment confirmed. The next thing we're going to talk about is the additional form. So there's a lot of things that go into additional form, and we're going to deep dive even more into this when we talk about methods on how you're going to send things, which is in 2 weeks, I believe, when we talk about booking appointments and all of the different ways that you can book appointments. Sam talked a lot about this section in her session on Tuesday about how you can have a scheduler with a lead capture form, or even a scheduler with a public proposal, because you'll want to add those things in there. But this section here is going to be where you can add in an additional form to go with your scheduler template. So for example, on this template, if I click into, let's say, this 30-minute consultation, and I have my availability set right here, you'll notice the other form tab that's next to availability. If I click on that, that's going to open up whichever form I attach to that. Now, this form section, you are only able to add in proposals, public proposals. Those are basically the same things. It just depends on the method on how you want to use it. So proposals, questionnaires, and lead capture forms. You're not able at the moment to have any contracts in this sequence at all. you can only have questionnaires, proposals, or lead captures. And that's also going to depend which one fits best for this. It's really going to depend on how you want people to come into the system or how you're using this scheduler template. If you want more of a deep dive into that, I would definitely watch Sam's session that she had on Tuesday, because she talked about the different methods on how you can get people into the system effectively with that lead capture form. One thing I will say for those of you who are watching this, I'll kind of echo some of those same things from Sam's webinar, is that with the additional form section, if you are using a template that is going to be publicly shared, meaning you're either sending, if we click on this little link icon, if you're either sending this direct link to somebody or you're embedding this on your website, if you're using a scheduler template where you're going to be using either one of these methods, at the very minimum, you have to have either a lead capture form in this space or a public proposal. The reason why is because you want to get that project created in Dubsado, and scheduler templates just on their own cannot create projects. If you have a schedule that you're using and you haven't added a form in there, you're probably noticing that the appointment is only on your calendar. There's no projects. You can't start workflows or send them more material. They're just on your calendar and in your address book. What you have to do, because schedulers can't create projects, is you need to use a form to go with it that can create a project. By doing this method here, when they're filling out your lead capture form, it creates the project and puts the appointment in that project. And then for the advanced way of doing things, if you have workflows attached to this form, then that also starts the workflow in their project. So at very minimum, you have to have at least a lead capture or a public proposal if you are sharing this publicly, embedded, or just sending the link to somebody. So that's a piece of it. I have that in my outline here. Can only be a lead capture, proposal, or questionnaire. The other thing about this, and this is important too, when you're adding this to go with a scheduler, to pay attention to this piece as well. The form has to be completed. At least all of the required fields have to be completed in order to book the appointment. So with that form, if you're attaching, let's say that you already have a project created and you're sending out a scheduler to somebody and you just want them to fill out just a normal questionnaire. If you put that questionnaire in there, it has to be filled out in order to book that appointment. So that might change whether or not you want to add that questionnaire in there, because it's going to be required to be filled out in order to lock in their appointment. So if you want them to just get a scheduler and then fill out a questionnaire later, then maybe once they book in your workflow, then send them out a questionnaire, since you don't need them to fill that out on spot when they are booking their time. So that's important. Whatever form you add in there, it has to be completed then in order to book that appointment. And then the last thing, it's what I just recently shared. I had a typo there. If the scheduler will be shared publicly, it must include a lead capture or public proposal. So that way you can get that project created underneath the leads area. You can get your workflows kicked in, contracts sent, all of that good stuff. Emails go out to them. So that's very important if you're using a publicly shared scheduler template. And we'll deep dive into that a lot more in 2 weeks. The next thing, this is actually something that's newer to Dubsado. We haven't had this the last time we did a scheduling webinar, so this is brand new, is to be able to redirect them after they fill out a form or after they fill out the sequence. So what that means is if they are on here and they fill out their availability, they book a time with you, and then they go to the form section, they fill this piece out, and then let's say they make a payment, maybe if you have the invoice feature turned on, the redirect URL is going to eliminate that confirmation email page that they get, and it's going to take them to whatever website you set up there. So what that means is I have Dubsado, for example, in this redirect URL. That means that once someone gets done filling it out, it just automatically takes them to that web page. If you have, let's say, a landing page for your website or a thank you page on your website that you want to create, you can put this in there and that will take them there once they're done. Now, One thing with this that I do want to stress now that this is a new feature, this should only be used for non-Dubsado related sites or URLs. What I mean by that is, since you can't have contracts, let's say, in this particular sequence, and contracts are not a part of the scheduler, you can't put a contract link in this email here to send them to something that's a contract inside of Dubsado. This can only be used for external purposes. So your landing page, or if you want to send them to your Facebook page, it has to be something outside of Dubsado. If you want them to get a contract, that would be part of your workflow, that once they book, the workflow then sends them out a contract. Or there's other cool workarounds where you can have contracts and confirmation emails. You can look at Sam's, she'll actually probably talk about that with our mini session webinar that we have coming up on how you can do cool things like that. But the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway here is that this should only be for something that is not a Dubsado URL that's in here in the system, like a link to a form or a link to another scheduler, or different things like that. You want this to only be outside URLs. So that's the redirect URL. This right here is very important to take in and understand what's going on in the system when you use these particular settings here, you adjust those options. And then the last thing, a couple more things here with the advanced tab, is the invoice section. With our scheduler templates, you can use invoicing, and you can have people pay a certain amount up front in order to lock in that appointment. What you would want to do is, if you turn this on, and I actually have, let me go to my paid session scheduler template. In the advanced tab, I have this turned on here. So you can create a line item that has to be paid in order to lock this in. So for example, let me just open this up here, copy this, and we'll paste this in there. So on here, what that's going to do for you, if you turn on the invoice feature, is that it's going to give you an invoice tab, and I have to set my availability here. Let me just do 2 and I'll submit this. It will then take me to, and I should have a lead capture form in here, but I don't. So let me just put in just some information here. This page right here, you will not want to be using this if you want a project created, because this will not create a project. That's kind of a whole nother side of things that we'll talk about in 2 weeks. But once you submit this, it's going to take you to the invoice, and this is required in order to lock in that appointment. So if you're wanting them to pay a certain fee up front, you'll use that invoice option there, and that's how they'll be required to make a payment in order to lock it in. So pay attention to that. If you have paid sessions, you can just add that into the scheduler template itself. You don't have to add that into the workflow where it sends out an invoice separately or anything like that. You can just put that in there, and this amount will be required in order to lock in the appointment. One thing that I will say, just a quick blurb for advanced users if you're watching this. If you have, let's say, a scheduler and a proposal, and you want them to pay, let's say, a 50% deposit, and you don't have any line items in here, then they technically can go through, book the appointment, fill out the proposal, and not pay in order to lock in that appointment. The only way, and I have this on my outline here, the only way that you can absolutely 100% require that they pay a certain amount up front is if it's a line item in the scheduler area. For some of you that may be completely over your head right now, that's totally fine. That was kind of an advanced tip for the really advanced users, is that the only way to require a payment is if it's in that invoice line item area. You can't have, let's say, a payment schedule on there on a proposal. They can still technically book the appointment, fill out the proposal, and skip paying, and it will still lock in everything. So just take that into consideration, that if it's required that they pay a certain amount in order to lock in their appointment, you have to put whatever that amount is in this section. So it might change up the way that you do things. So that's where you can add in a line item. You can add in multiple line items if you want to, but that's going to be there. And then the next thing is applying discounts. Now, this is pretty straightforward to apply a discount. I don't have it in my outline because it's just adding in a discount into the scheduler template, but I will talk really quickly on kind of a cool tip that you can do here. So a lot of people want to test out their scheduler template. Let's say they have a scheduler with a lead capture form and also an invoice that they need to pay. Obviously, as a business owner, when you're testing this, you don't want to have to actually pay yourself money in order to get things to work. So a hack that you can do is if you turn on the discounts here and you go into the packages section and you create a discount for 100%. So in this discount section, you can create a 100% discount. On your scheduler template, you can apply that to this section at the bottom that it will, sorry if I turn on the invoice there, that you can have a 100% discount being used. So that way you can book yourself an appointment, fill out the lead capture form, and when it gets to that payment for the certain session fee, you can put in your 100% discount. It will acknowledge it that you've paid, and then it will kick in everything that you needed to do. So that's just a quick hack for the applying discounts. Other than that, you can use that for just about any other purpose. If you provide a 50% discount, just make sure you add those to the scheduler template here. So that way, when people are using this, the scheduler template is already set up to accept those discounts. And then two other things here, and then we'll shift gears. The notification section. This is going to be where you can add in, I'm just going to shut this off here. This is going to be where you can add in appointment reminders. So the reminders that people get, as well as the confirmation emails, both of those are built into the scheduler template. So a lot of people in their workflows I've seen have appointment reminders going out in their workflows, like 1 hour before the appointment starts. You don't need to add that into your workflow because it's actually a part of the scheduler template itself, much like a confirmation email. The only difference is there's not an automatic appointment reminder that goes out. You do have to turn on this option in order to send out a notification. And once you do that, you can then add in the duration, whether it's this many minutes before the appointment or this many hours if you want to do 48 hours or 24. And then you can select from your emails which confirmation email or you want to use, or sorry, appointment reminder email you want to use for that. So let's say I wanted to do one for an hour before their call and also 24 hours. So that is a really big piece of the scheduler template as well. And if you take anything away from today, take those two things, is that confirmation emails and appointment reminders are automated inside the scheduler template. So you build those in here and not in your workflow. And then the last thing is monthly view. You can turn that on. We actually took a look at that here underneath the paid session. So this is the actual monthly view. So as you can see, it gives you a full month. The other view that we have is the weekly view, which is more like this. And they can obviously cycle through weeks. And again, that's all the farther you can see on my calendar. But you can decide which view you like better. If you want it to be just this next upcoming week, then you can do it that way. If it's something you want someone to book, a long ways out, you can use the monthly view. But that's all that this does down here at the bottom, is just decides if you want to do monthly or weekly, whichever one works best for you aesthetically. One thing that I will mention is that the save button is down here. When you make your adjustments and you change all these things, don't forget to click save, because if you don't, then obviously it's not going to save it. We don't have auto save. So make sure you click save at the bottom once you're done making your adjustments there. So that's how you can build a scheduler template. We covered every single preset, every single parameter, so you know exactly what each one does and the functionality of it. The next thing we're going to talk about is appointment smart fields. We just have a few more things here, I believe. Yeah, just two more quick things here, and then we'll wrap up, and then you guys are free to ask me some questions, and then we can get those answered. So appointment smart fields. I wanted to add this into today's session because we're talking about confirmation emails. We're talking about appointment reminders. So I thought now is the best time to get this piece of it out of the way. appointment smart fields, if we go into canned emails and we'll go into, I believe it's my confirmation email. Yes. So appointment smart fields, a lot of people in the system are using this appointment smart field section, all of these different ones that we have. So appointment name, location, duration, start date, end time, all of these different ones that we have, they're putting that in all different places in our system. And it's not going to work the way that, it's thought that it's going to work. And so let me explain how these appointment smart fields can be used and should be used. So in the system, it's kind of a blanket statement, but appointment smart fields can only be used in confirmation and appointment reminder emails that are connected to the template itself. And we just talked about that with the scheduler template. You can only use appointment smart fields that are going out in this email and your notification reminders. You are not able to use appointment smart fields to manually send an email. So let's say I'm inside of a project, I click send email, I grab one of my canned emails that has appointment smart fields in there and I send it. The reason you can't do that is because those appointment smart fields don't have anything to read from. It doesn't know which appointment information to put in because you're just sending just a normal email. In our minds, we might think, well, there's only one appointment there, so obviously it can read it, but those smart fields can only read what it's attached to. So you're not able to add those in just an email and send it out, or in a workflow. It's kind of the same idea where you just have an appointment reminder email being sent out. You're not able to use those. Or in the invitation email, we kind of talked about that earlier, where on the basic section here, since this is designed to be inviting someone to book with you, you can't use those appointment triggers because that's going to show the appointment that they booked and they haven't booked yet when you're sending out this email. So they can't be used in the invitation email section. And then lastly, I have seen this once or twice, so I just wanted to add this in there. You're not able to pull information from a non-Dubsado booked appointment. So some people that I've spoken with, they've used appointment smart fields and the client's booking in, let's say, Acuity, and it's being brought into Dubsado. You're not able to use those appointment smart fields to read an appointment from another party. So if you're using Calendly, and then you have a project getting created through Zapier, and then in a workflow that starts, you're not able to use smart fields in that aspect either. So just to kind of break that down, I'll kind of refer to my first kind of blanket statement here. Appointment smart fields can only be used on a scheduler template in the advanced tab. If you're using those appointment smart fields, they can only be used in confirmation and also notification emails because it has something to read from. It's attached to that scheduler, so it knows what information to display there. You want to join those two together. So let's take a look at these here because I wanted to kind of break this down so you guys can see in depth on what this actually looks like side to side in an actual email. So client first name, that's not an appointment smart field, but I have that in there. So hi Cameron, myself, I sent myself an email. Your appointment with brand name, that's not an appointment smart field, but your appointment with Dubsado has been confirmed. The date, so the appointment start date, June 22nd is when I booked the appointment. The start time smart field and end time smart field, it can plug in that information because it's going from a confirmation email attached to that scheduler. So those smart fields know what information to pull from. And then the duration, 30 minutes, the location, and we talked about that earlier. When you put that Zoom location in there or whatever location you have, you'll notice that it becomes hyperlinked so people can actually click on that in the confirmation email if they want to. So that will autofill if you have a hyperlink in there. And then the appointment calendar link. A lot of people ask, how can the client put this on their calendar? You'll use the appointment calendar link or the add to calendar option, and that will give them a little hyperlink to click on to add that event to their Google Calendar, iCal, whichever calendar they're using. And then the last two things are the reschedule and cancel buttons. So in here, We do have reschedule capabilities and cancellation. We're going to talk about that in 2 weeks with booking appointments and how you can reschedule, cancel, all of that, kind of managing appointments. But just from the aesthetics of it here, this is what that's going to translate to. Now, one thing that I have in my outline right down here, the reschedule button is going to be your brand color. So whatever brand color you have, which is in the settings tab, that's going to be your reschedule button color. There's not a way to change the cancel appointment color right now. It's always going to be that color for the time being, but your reschedule button will be whatever your brand color is. So mine's purple. So that's going to be what color the reschedule button is. So that's a quick demonstration on how those appointment smart fields work. It's because I use that email in the actual template itself, so it knows what information to pull from. So if you have appointment smart fields somewhere in your process and you're noticing that information is not being auto-filled, look to see if you're sending that in just a workflow email, or maybe you're manually sending it. It has to be a part of that scheduler template. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'll answer this question because I'm sure some of you might have this question. If somebody's already booked with me, how can I get that information to them? There's not a way to just send an email out with that appointment information. So what you would need to do is just send them a manual email right in the time and send it to them, because it's not attached to a scheduler. So you can't use those smart fields right now. But that's how you would do it. Just send them a quick manual email. If you want to, you could bring up your canned email that you use and then just delete those smart fields and write in the actual time and send it. You could definitely do that. It would take a minute or two. So that's how you can use the appointment smart fields effectively in the system. The last thing we're going to talk about is scheduler groups. Now, scheduler groups seems like this massive, massive feature, but the only thing that scheduler groups do, they're designed to combine similar appointment types to be sent in a packaged format. All scheduler templates do is take templates that you've already built, and you can basically just bundle them together to give the client a choice of which one they want to use. There's not too much more magic than that. A lot of people might be intimidated by them, but I'm going to show you here in just a second. It's really simple to put one together. And as long as you understand what's happening when you send one out, you'll kind of get a feel for what they're designed for. So for example, these work really well if you have, let's say, 3 different appointment locations to choose from. Let's say that you're doing a coffee chat with somebody, and there's 3 different coffee houses that you really love, and you want to give your client the ability to choose from maybe 3 different ones. You can send that out to them as a bundle so they can choose from the different locations on which one works better. If you have 2 different types of consultation calls, and that's the example I'm going to show you here in a second. Let's say you have a 15-minute consultation and you have a 45-minute consultation. You can bundle those together and send those out as one and let your client choose which one they're interested in. And that's really all the scheduler groups do. So let's go in here and let's go to scheduler groups. It's this tab right next to appointment schedulers. Now, with the scheduler groups, I have one here, but I'll basically show you. If you click add group in the top right, it's going to allow you to create a scheduler group name. And so you can title it whatever you would like it to be. And then all you're going to do is choose from the different appointment scheduler templates you already have, and you can choose which ones are going to make up this bundle. That's really all it does. The email, again, this is the invitation email. This is if you're sending the scheduler group to somebody. I'd like to schedule an appointment with you. Choose the type of appointment you would like to make and let me know what is best for you. And then it has that group link in there to send all of them together. So that's how you would create it. It's very simple to do. The most work you're going to do is actually building the scheduler templates themselves. And then you can take this scheduler group and you can just bundle them together. So I have one created here. And if I click this drop down, it's going to show me all of the different templates that make up this group. So you can always check to see which ones are in there. Then what you can do, if you click the settings gear, I'll just show you this. If you want to copy the group or delete the group or edit the actual scheduler group itself, change the name or which ones are a part of it, you can always edit that. But here's the biggest piece of this. If you click the share button and let's say consultations. Now, the reason I'm using this share option and sharing this publicly is because more than likely, if these are consultations that I'm sending to someone, it's going to be most likely because they're not in Dubsado yet. So this is probably going to be publicly shared with someone. I'm either embedding this on a website or maybe I send this link out to somebody to have them book. My Siri is acting up on my watch. Sorry about that. But if I grab this link here, I'm going to copy this so you guys can see what this looks like if I were to send this to someone who's brand new and I want them in the system. All it does for you is it takes all of those different templates and it just puts them together in a packaged way. So for example, let me zoom in here so you guys can see. So I have my 15-minute consultation. It has the information there, my 30-minute consultation. And then let's also say that I do a 30-minute in-person consultation, maybe not right now because of COVID, but if once everything opens back up, maybe I do that and I have a location there as well. So once you have this set up in a group, the next step is really simple. They'll click on which one they want and it takes them into that scheduler template. So all the parameters that you set up, this 15-minute, I only have Fridays and Saturdays available. So that's all it really does is it groups it together. And then once they click into it, then it's just business as usual. It just goes right into the flow. They click the availability, fill out the form, maybe an invoice if it's paid, and then they get created in the system. So with scheduler groups, like I said, the best option for these is if it's the same type of appointment. So these are all consultations that I have. The other great purpose for this would be if you have different locations, like I said, for coffee chats, if that's different, if the duration is different in appointments, anything that you want to combine where the parameters are slightly different, that's a way that you can group these together and send it out all as one so that people can make their selections on which one fits best for them. So that's how scheduler groups are made. Again, it seems like it's a really big thing and hard to put together or trying to grasp that concept, but really all scheduler groups are is just taking templates you already have and just packaging them and sending it out to somebody.